Hey, this is Zac.
And I'm Clint, and we wanted to thank Exo-terra for sponsoring this episode of Colubrid and Colubroid Radio.
Exo-terra is the industry leader in glass terrarium enclosures, and we are a big fan of getting to see the species we work with both at home and at the university.
We utilize Exo-terra caging here at Metazotics, and in addition to top quality terrariums, Exo-terra offers an array of heating options, lighting, supplements, decor, and truthfully anything needed or wanted when keeping reptiles.
Thank you, Exo-terra, for supporting Colubrid and Colubroid Radio.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Colubrid and Colubroid Radio. Zac here, as always, with my good friend Clint. How are you doing, sir?
This is another one of those days that I'm very tired.
Oh, I'm tired too.
But still glad to be here.
Yeah. In case you can't tell if my voice sounds odd, I am sick. I haven't been sick for 3.5 years, something like that. In fact, the last time I was sick is when I had COVID. So, but I was standing in my kitchen right before we started to record tonight, and I was coughing, and my wife was like, "You're going to record tonight?" And I said to her, "Kathy, the show must go on."
That's dedication. That's right, Kathy.
And then she looked at me like, "Okay, asshole, you're going to go into a coma when this is all over with." And I was like, "Yes, this is correct." So anyway.
But then she says, can you take the trash out afterwards? And you're like, "But
yeah,
I'm sick."
Ironically,
I'm so
that
sick.
was actually said because it is garbage night in Wheeling, West Virginia. So, but yeah, no, I am back from a very exciting, important weekend. This past weekend, we took the students to Iowa and launched the products of the Colubrid Fest auction. And then those of you who've donated to the Colubrid and Colubroid Radio Conservation Corps. So we are putting our money where our mouth is, and I will be giving all kinds of updates on the project and where we are and what's going on during the science update. So the science update tonight is all about our project. And then before I forget to say it, we don't have a guest tonight. It's one of our Zac Clint hangout episodes, and Max is behind the scenes. And
It's going to be a fun one, though. We got a good idea for this one.
Well, Clint gets the credit for this one. So we gave Max a handful of controversial topics in herpetoculture today, and we're not going to know. We know what the topics are, so there's been a little bit of prep, but we don't know which one he's going to dump on us. And then we're going to give our personal takes, and for some they'll be the same, for some they'll be different, and it should be a fun time. Because, that's the show tonight.
I think all in what we're hoping to accomplish with the show is to be able to give a couple, maybe some different angles, and different ways to think on these topics that there are some kind of staunch opinions on that, I guess, taking the CCR route, that you can talk about these and think of these in different ways without it being a battle, an argument, or somebody has to be right, somebody has to be wrong. So,
yes.
And again, these are our opinions tonight. Okay. This is just what we think.
Yeah. So before we jump into that, just our typical normal updates. The semester is winding down. We are definitely at the point in the spring semester where the professors are starting to get a little bit burned out. Students are starting to get burned out. And now it's the time where you got to gut it out to the end. So, but I'm still loving life because I'm teaching biology of snakes. I've got a lot of snakes to cover in a short period of time, but I'm in it to win it. So I'm going to get that done. So that's that. And then I think that happened since the last recording. I may have to. And by the way, guys, sick. Cold medicine's taken over my brain, so I might have said things that I talked about in the previous episode. But I had a Madagascar hognose snake drop eggs, and
this is new.
Okay,
I didn't know that.
Cool.
Okay,
first time for me. So I made a nest box followed the other Dr. Zac's directions to a T. Black nest box, sphagnum, cocoa chip, all that kind of good stuff. And I saw that she looked gravid. And I threw the nest box in there, and she went into the nest box immediately, was hanging out in there. And I think what happened is when she was kind of spinning around, getting ready to drop her eggs, her cloaca ended up just outside of the box. and she dropped a perfect clutch of eggs just outside of the nest box, which meant I walked into a bunch of dehydrated eggs, and then I looked in the nest box, and there was one egg, and she was sitting in there. So I learned my lesson. She needed a bigger nest box. That won't be done again. And unfortunately, some of the eggs went. I'm pretty sure we talked about this in the last.
Let's say now it sounds familiar. The laying outside, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
But anyway, so that happened. I have had locks all over the place, so I know things are cooking. Hognose snakes, king snakes, bull snakes, rat snakes. I'm thinking about this. I had my brown musaranas have locked a ton, and that's a fun one, but they locked last year. I didn't get any eggs, so we'll see how that goes. And then I have Boiruna, which are the black musaranas. I didn't see locks, but I looked at the female's vent, and there was some evidence down yonder way of a lock. So that would be a new one for me if I got eggs from that. So, yeah.
Nice.
Sorry about the repeat on the Madagascar, but you got to hear it again. Right. Now you know. Make sure you have a bigger nest box than you think you need. So that's where I am with that. And we headed out to Iowa, but you're going to get the goods on that during the science update. So anything new with you?
Right on. Yeah, we made some good, exciting stuff. I went through and I try at least once a week right now to check out all the female breeders and see who's gravid, and I'm marking. And I think the last time I counted, we're already over 40, maybe 50 gravid females.
Nice.
At least. It looks like we're having a pretty successful, well, I say successful, we don't know until they have them, but I think we have 4 or 5 pregnant boas right now. 2 Dumerals, and I'm really excited about that. We had slugs last year on one of our Dumeral girls. So, with boas, I don't, we're not successful until I see them wiggling, but so that's cool. And I can't remember if I said this last week, but Spiloides.
Yeah.
I've got a gravid girl, the girl that I got from you.
Nice.
Actually. Yeah. So she is gravid.
That's cool.
I mean, she's been in it. She's already had her pre-lay shed. She's in and out of the nest box. So, we're kind of talking anytime in the next few days. So really excited about that.
That's fantastic.
I also got a full-on breeding colony of Barron's racers. So from friend of the show, Cole Grover, we got I think 2.4 adults and a pair of yearlings. And I'd said this to you. I didn't realize how big Barron's really got. I mean, any of them I've seen have not been nearly, to this length. And I mean, we're talking 6-footers, and we've got them all set up on some nice naturalistic enclosures, got them set up with UVB, as well as some heat emitters. And I mean, I'm already seeing this personality come out in them, because the ones that I've got, they're not like super aggressive. I haven't really got them out to handle them, but Steve's already talked about, the first week he fed them, they were a little shy, and he's just drop feeding, he's not even tease feeding. He goes, this week they were at the door waiting on me. He said that they knew what was up, and they were like, come on. So,
so Barron's racers are second to false water cobras for me.
They're cool, man. I'm really liking them, and
that was a tag team effort between Cole and I, because Cole reached out to me, and I was like, I can't take that many Barronine, but Clint can.
And I'm over here thinking I don't need to take on any other projects right now, but
and I'm over here saying,
these.
You really need these.
So, I reached out to our DNR just to ensure that they fell within the white list of rear fang, and they do. So we picked them up, and I'm going to start pairing them actually this week. So that's exciting. But all that's, moving along pretty steadily as far as breeding. There's even, I don't know if any of you who listen are keeping tortoises. They are the funniest little things. I've got a male Herman's tortoise, and he's in this big pen here in the shop with 3 females. And that guy is all over those girls. And the funny thing is you don't even have to look. You can just be walking by and you hear, every time he tries, he's on their back. It's so funny, man. So,
Wow.
but we've got our Herman's tortoise eggs are probably due to hatch within the next month or so. So that's cool. But he's still all over them.
I would like to thank you for imitating a male Herman's tortoise. Someone's going to take that and turn it into like their text message.
I'm going to be a GIF. Yeah.
Yeah. There you go. There you go.
We had a show this last weekend over in Lexington, Kentucky. Always have a good time over there. But really, I mean, other than that, that's pretty much where we're at now. Is just getting it's kind of the calm before the storm. I think we're towards the end. Tax season ended a little early, and I'll talk a little bit more about that here in a moment. But so now we're in that kind of tax season has stopped. Now we're waiting on eggs to drop and hatch and the explosion that comes with, summer. So
Cool.
that's where I'm at. Do you want me to jump right into the market update?
Sure. Go for it.
All right. Yeah, we can do that. So we're not going to talk too heavy on specific numbers right now because we just did that, I think on the last episode. But what's happening out there is, as I just mentioned, it does seem like the tax season has ended a little early. Tax season used to strictly run from like the second week of January up until the end of March. That was your window. Then it started to shift until you didn't really see the money hitting until February, and then it would run into mid to late April. And that was due to just it seemed like the government kept delaying the taxes being returned. Well, this year, it seems like it still hit about the same time as far as the February timeframe, but ended right at the beginning of April. And I don't want to say that things just fell off. It wasn't like that, but I could certainly see the trend come down compared to where it has, and not just in this industry, but I'm basing a lot of what I'm saying right now off of my years of following. It was the optical industry, and the optical industry, whenever you have a purchase that's typically the $300 to $500 range, meaning eyeglasses, you're doing that whenever you have this influx of money. So we would really feel it in tax season too. Well, I think, and this is again just opinion, this is where I try to decipher why things are happening. And I think we have two things. One, I'm betting that more tax money this year had to be utilized on catching up bills than what you typically do, because the cost of living right now is certainly higher than in typical years. I mean, we always hear about eggs and just the cost of feeding your family. I mean, it's ridiculous. I've got 6 people in my house and it's stupid, on how much money we spend on food. So I think that's probably part of it, is the tax money didn't go as far. And then I also think that there is some hesitation and reservations right now on spending because of the tariffs and what we're dealing with here in the U.S. And I know, and I've said this before about you're going, expect that some pricing is going to go up, and it's really close. I've been talking to some other, industries and as well as many in our industry. So I can tell you things like substrates. Keep an eye on those. Substrate prices are probably going to increase because a lot of this stuff, it's not here. It's not always that. This isn't all about manufacturing jobs. When it comes to tariffs, there are a lot of products that do not exist here, like the raw materials do not exist here. So things like that are really going to affect certain areas, of the hobby. And, like I said, you can expect that to probably happen very soon. I think that Craig Trumbauer had mentioned on Corn Stars, yeah, that it's looking like the price of the book that he just released, that we're all dying to get a hold of, the Bull Snake Gophers, that I think the price of that book is going to jump compared to where they were targeting because of the tariffs. I mean, it's everything right now. And it's hard to talk about anything business related and not talk about that. And that's with not caring what side of the aisle you fall on. Right now, no one can. We can disagree on whether or not it's a long-term good thing, but right now, it sucks. Right now, it's a problem. I can say, I didn't mention at the start of this, of course, the marketplace. I'm sorry. Of course, the market update is brought to you by the Show Me Reptile Show and Marketplace. And I say that because I was at a reptile expo this past week, and this wasn't a Show Me show. This was Lexington, Kentucky, KRE, and it was the lightest vendor turnout I've ever seen at this location. And this is a strong promoter. I've introduced Mickey and this promoter before because I've told him, you two, I think, are fantastic at what you do. And, I think that it only benefits them to know one another. But anyways, it was a much lighter vendor turnout. And when I talked to the promoter about that, he mentioned that a lot of people just didn't have the inventory. They said they didn't have enough to bring. And that's kind of where we're at, right here in that this is your lowest point of having animals up until things start hatching out and ready. And so I think we're going to see a little bit of a slowdown up until probably June, as far as, when it really starts cranking. But for those who do have inventory, get that crap out there, put it on the internet, get yourself to shows, because, with lower vendor turnout, even if there's lower attendance, that still usually equates to the same amount, if not more, dollars per table, per vendor.
Sure.
So, we still did well. I mean, no complaints, on my end, but just things to keep in mind when looking at how things are trending out there right now.
Gotcha.
I'll turn it over to you, big guy.
All right. So, science update brought to us by Rare Genetics Inc. Get your shed skins to Kayla and Ben. I'm certain they still want them. So if you want to see the protocol, go to the website. But all that you need is a nickel-sized piece of shed that is dry, put in a baggie or an envelope, and then written on the baggie, the morph, or written on a piece of paper and shoved in the envelope or the baggie, the morph of the snake. And then they will stockpile those in a frozen library. And then as they want to produce the SNPs and figure out the genetic process to identify the morphs, they have what they need to do that. And we're very proud of our role in this because we push science with our show. And this is kind of where Clint and I's worlds smash together into one, which is pretty cool. So but science update today, not a book, not a publication. It's a very special update, I think, in that, in case you if you're just now listening to the show, you may want to go back and listen to the shows about Colubrid Fest. We had a Colubrid Fest wrap-up show. Colubrid Fest is our big annual event that we sponsor or help Mickey put on. And we've done one. And in doing this event, we talked about how we wanted to have a conservation initiative, and we wanted to have a mechanism where money was ascertained, gathered at Colubrid Fest, and then we would put that money towards science that then helps colubrid snakes and then gathers data that could be used for both conservation and to promote evidence-based husbandry. And I, of course, had a project because I'm working on the hognose snake book, and I met these wonderful individuals in Iowa, and many people know them, Don, Jim, and Dr. Josh at Cornell College. And basically went there last May and saw what they were doing with hognose snakes and thought that my students and I could definitely help. And they were gracious enough to let us join their crew. And basically, we're all working, collaborating together on this project. And the project is looking at multiple things. It's looking at what's called the autoecology of hognose snakes. So basically the who, what, when, where, and why of them. If you answer any of those W questions, We're gathering data to answer things like who do they eat? Who eats them? Where do they go during the day? Where do they go during the night? That's kind of an autocology approach. And so to do this, we need money. And last fall, we raised right around $11,000. And then John Rice graciously auctioned off a hognose snake on Morph Market and then gave the proceeds of that to us, which I know we've had people like the Westmorelands who have sold bracelets and sold books and done all kinds of wonderful things promoting what we're doing. And so I took that money, I wrote a couple little grants through the university, and I got the pot of cash up to about I think I was right at around $19,000, and did a national search, brought on 2 graduate students, and then had a 3rd graduate student who attended Colubrid Fest, Tyler. And so we have Tyler, Paige, and Alyssa are brand new. And so I recruited for the grad students, got them into the lab, and spent the last month buying radio transmitters. So we now have 20 radio transmitters being made in Canada. We found out with our permitting that they want us to reduce the number of transmitters. So I'm going to kind of pull that number back ultimately. Bought these things called receivers and antennas. If you've ever watched on National Geographic or Discovery Channel, somebody radio tracking an animal, they're holding up the antenna that hooks into a receiver. And I refer to it as the machine that goes beep, because that's literally all it does is you walk. And when you're far away, it's a light beep. And as you get closer, the beep gets louder. And, I wanted to have dedicated receivers. So we used the funding to buy those. I bought 700 pit tags, which was kind of fun. And that's based off the fact that we think we're going to get over 700 snakes. And so all that was purchased, but we hadn't gone out to the field yet. And so talked to Don, Jim, and Josh, and we basically decided that this past weekend was the weekend that we need to get the field site prepped, and we'll talk about what that is, because you always want to get your traps out before emergence or mass emergence, because then you can capture the seasonal data and get an idea of the phenology of the snake. So who comes out first, second, third, fourth, fifth, all that kind of jazz. And so we needed to get to Iowa. And Iowa is not close to West Virginia. I am in the Appalachian Mountains, which are mountains. Iowa is in the Great Plains, which are flat. And you've got to go through 2 other biomes to get there. So it takes us about 11 hours of driving across the Midwest. And I want to give kudos to those of you who live in the Great Corn Desert, because I do not live in the Great Corn Desert, and I can't drive more than a quarter of a mile and do this. We have these things called turns in Appalachia.
Yeah, those annoy me.
Yeah. You get out there. How do you all stay awake? How do you not die in fires? I don't understand this. I get physically angry driving straight that much. So anyway, I'm not gonna complain. This is happy times. But I will say one thing: driving across Illinois, a piece of my soul dies every time I do that drive. I get to Urbana and I am losing it. So anyway, so we get there after 11 hours. And in case you can't hear this, I haven't been sick for a long time. And good old Murphy decided to show up and give me a raging respiratory infection. So what we had to do is the students, Jim, Don, and Dr. Josh and I, and Jim's wife, and DJ, Don's son, we basically had to put in these things called drip fences, which are silt fences. Dig a trench, put the fence down in there, and then you put along the fence buckets and traps, like inverted cone traps. They look like minnow traps. And basically what happens is the snakes hit the fence. They're out in a prairie. They're not expecting any kind of wall. And then they follow the wall and they either fall in the buckets or they go into the traps. And so you then go out in the morning and the afternoon and check them twice a day. So it's a pretty massive effort. And then that's how you get your numbers and you do your data. So we had to get these fences built. And I'm extremely proud of everyone because we put in literally thousands of feet of drift fence on Saturday, and we did it all one day, and we thought we were going to do it in 2 days. And then the best part was we didn't know if we were going to find any snakes. I mean, it was really good weather, so we thought we would get a snake. And sure enough, after about 5 hours, beautiful red-sided garter snake was caught. So I made a post on social media. I put it up. I shared it on the official Colubrid Fest page. I think it's being shared on our CCR page, and then it's on my page, so you can see it. But I'm going to say something. As a scientist, you have like special little moments that don't mean anything to anybody else, but they mean something to you. And Dawn and Laura were the ones that caught the snake. And so I was off on a part of the sand prairie. So I walked over, and it was just a crazy cool moment. To everybody else, it's just a garter snake. But that was our first snake. So we did this, we took this thing that we were talking about. I mean, I didn't know that we were going to be doing this in Iowa this time last year. No clue. Hadn't been to Iowa yet. And now, we're starting this long-term monitoring site of all these snakes that are present in herpetoculture and all these species that oftentimes don't get any kind of research attention. And now they're going to get a lot of research attention. And it was just a really cool moment. I walked away to take a picture of the snake, and I would be lying if I didn't have like chills going up and down my back, thinking like, man, this is like the first one. And so I'm just curious by the end of the year how many freaking snake captures we're going to have. But what we're doing is when we get the animals, we are measuring them, we're weighing them, excuse me, we're pit tagging them, we're sexing them, we're noting where we caught them, and then we're letting them go. And basically the idea is, people have heard me talk about Henry Fitch before. He's one of my heroes. And he did this on a reservation in Kansas where he basically, I talked about the book, Kansas Snake Community. We're essentially doing that at this site. So there's going to be so many freaking projects, so many potential papers, so many capstones for our students, so many master's theses for the grad students. And but it was really, really, really kind of special. And Alyssa and Paige are two brand new grad students. This was their first trip out there, and they're going to be living in Iowa, and they're rock stars. We basically started at 8 and ended right around 7. So it was an 11-hour day, and it was pretty, by the end of the day, we were all spent. There was a moment right around 3:00 where I know that I was going into a literal oxygen debt, because I was crawling on my hands and knees next to the drift fence, and they had burned a section, and I saw these like little shoots of grass coming up out of the ground. I don't know what the hell possessed my 46-year-old PhD mind, but I was sitting there. I was like, I want to see what the hognose snakes see. So I like laid down on the ground and had my face on the ground, just staring at this grass. And Alyssa came by and was like, "Are you okay?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'm fine. I just want to see what the snake sees." She probably thinks I'm insane. So anyway, I like, get it together, Loughman. Let's go. Let's rally here. But at the so we have the drift fences up, and so Sunday, of course, we got to go check them. And we weren't expecting large numbers. It got down to like 48 degrees. And the coolest thing was, we're walking on the line, and I had 2 undergrads with me, Stanley and Colton. And Colton had never been out to Iowa before. Stanley went with me last year, and Stanley went to Colubrid Fest too. And I'm like 40 feet behind Colton. We had just got done saying it's about 2 weeks before the hognose snake should be coming out. And Colton goes, "Hog." Like, he doesn't like yell, "Oh my God, it was just hog." And we all like laser beamed to him. And sure enough, he had this little male hognose snake, which was really cool and special. So we all got a group picture with that. But the project has now launched. We'll be giving updates periodically. Check our Facebook page, because I'm totally going to be, like I said, at Colubrid Fest, we're going to be giving you all updates, because you guys are the ones that are helping fund this. Excuse me. And if you want to support us, and believe me, we can use the support. always consider our conservation corps. We got our website for that, and you can go and make a donation. And I'm telling you right now, you know us, that money's going straight to that project. And I am so pumped. My brain was going a million miles a minute about, how all the research questions we could answer to drive evidence-based husbandry for hognose snakes. Like I was just, I was just incredibly excited. So anyway, and then we left and drove 11 and a half hours back across the Corn Desert to West Virginia. So we spent 22 hours in the car, 11 hours in the field, and about 10 hours sleeping, but it was still pretty damn special. So
that's awesome.
We have launched. We have liftoff. So there you go.
There's a few things I want to say about the Conservation Corp, and so one, we've thanked several people, by name, and there's one that I want to make sure that we mention as well, Billy Sven.
Yes, Billy.
Yes, and
Sven.
he made a substantial donation, and he's got a piece that he is now. It's been published. It's finalized. What's the minimum, the captive equivalence as a minimum standard of welfare? Talking about captive reptiles and amphibians, and I think that's actually that piece. Where maybe we'll see about bringing Billy on and discussing that in depth here on the show, because it was one of the talks during the last IHS that I came back and I requested. I reached out and I'm like, Billy, can you send me? I go, even if I can't have all of the presentation yet, there's a particular slide that I really, really liked that I want to work with my team on. So he's now sent it to me that it's been public. Everything's good. So anyways, wanted to give Billy a shout out. I also, and I don't know if this sounds cocky when I say this, but when you just said, that it's taken off, right? You're seeing the it's coming to fruition, and the project's happening. And while you're saying that, I'm also thinking about like those nest boxes that I mentioned on the last episode that Andrew's designed based off of Dr. Whitman's, talk there at Kluberfest. And I'm thinking, we're just getting started.
Yeah.
We're just getting started. And I mean that with no arrogance. And I don't mean we as in just you and I, Zach. I mean we as in the Colubrid community, because we are now community. We've got this unification that's really taking place, and kind of this organization that's taken place now of the things that community wants to see accomplished. And so we're already seeing scientific advancement taking place with the field research that's when I say taking place, going to happen because of the field work that's now taken off. We're seeing product development that's going to better our systems and our way of keeping. It's super exciting. It's really, really exciting to see that happen. And there's another piece, and this, of course, comes from the market guy, right? Something I want to share that I was able to. Actually the idea was brought to me by the herptile manager of a zoo. And I'm not sure if they would be comfortable with me saying the zoo, so I'm not going to put that out there. It's someone who I know has been in contact with you recently as well, Zach. And they wanted to move all of their reptile supply purchasing to Metazotics, but was hoping to be able to do something where it could benefit the conservation fund as well. And I'm like, yes, absolutely. So basically what we're doing, and I'm saying this because I want to put this same offer out there for any other zoo or accredited, foundation, that if any purchases for supplies and goods from Metazotics will then take 10% of that purchase and donate it straight to the CCR Conservation Fund. That's what we're doing with every purchase from this particular zoo. I know we have other curators and managers of various departments, so I want to put that out there that it's another way. It's things you're going to have to buy anyway, and it's another way for us to contribute to that fund and continue to be able to do positive things. So I thought it was a great idea. Channing, it's from you. I can say your name. He's a listener, and I thought it was a great idea. And made me want to mention it to everyone else out there too. So
yeah. And the really fun thing about our Iowa project is that Don, Jim, and Dr. Josh, they've been studying the hognose snakes, but and the work that they've done is incredible. Like these three guys and some of Josh's students have done a tremendous amount of work. But with the addition of West Liberty now, the like orders of magnitude of work that can be accomplished with the personnel that we're providing now, it's astronomical. So, but I had no way of funding this. You know, this was like a pipe dream, and now we do. And so it's really, really kind of fantastic as a scientist because, you know, this, once again, not being political, but it's a fact. This is not a good time to be a scientist. All of our funding streams are basically under threat if it has anything to do with the federal government. I personally have lost over six figures worth of funding and had to navigate that space. But having funding streams that are protected from that is a really big deal. And by having this funding stream, we drive the questions. A lot of times you get this thing in my world called an RFP, request for proposals, and there's a research question that they want you to answer to fill a knowledge void, and then you kind of have to go that direction. But we still have to obviously get permits, and the Iowa DNR has been great. We can't just study anything at will, but we aren't confined necessarily to research questions for species that are rare or hard to find. And if you're going to advance the biology of snakes, snake science, you got to understand what the common species are doing too. Like that's important because I say this all the time in my conservation biology question or classes. We never study why something's common. We always study things on the verge of extinction or they're heading that direction. But and it's maybe a little bit disingenuous for me to say that, but it's rare that you go out and intensively study things when they aren't entirely on the verge of extinction. And it's nice. It's just nice. When I'm saying study things, I mean reptiles and amphibians. So
what I think's neat about what you guys are doing out there is it's not really even necessarily a targeted species. I mean, it is in a way with the hognose, but you guys are studying all of it there. You know what I mean? So it's more of studying that habitat more so than it is studying just a certain species that happens to live in that area. No. And I think in how they intertwine, I think it's awesome.
No, there's this thing called a community ecology, and you're basically trying to figure out every animal has a niche, has an ecological role. And there's this idea called Gauss's law of competitive exclusion. And to kind of break that down and not have a 50-minute ecology lecture, it basically says that no two organisms can do the exact biological thing in space and time. And so the way that the drift fences are set up, the way that we, and this is all Don, Jim, and Josh, they get all the credit in the world, is they had the foresight to help us out and set the fences up where we have fences in prairie, we have fences along ecotonal edges, we have fences that are near wetlands. So the major macro habitats all have fences, and then they're duplicated. So we got replication. So we're going to be able, with this community stuff, which isn't necessarily the hognose stuff, but hognose are part of it. We're going to really be able to dig in onto how this site can maintain the snake density and diversity that it maintains. And that is, just to talk a little bit this from my perspective, if you would have told 20-year-old Zac Loughman that he got to do this study, I would have passed out with happiness. So I am nerding the hell out, in case you guys can't tell. But it's going to be great. I am really looking forward to this. I am incredibly grateful to Don, Jim, and Josh for allowing West Lib in and for allowing us to, include our community with this. And the sky's the limit, and I will be giving you updates. So that is where we are with that.
Fantastic. All right. Well, I think it'll be time for us to move into some questions. And so the rest of the episode, of course, is going to be brought to you by ReptiChip. Normally that's our guest segment that ReptiChip sponsors, but now it's going to be sponsoring this controversial conversation.
Yeah.
So this will be the most controversial episode CCR has ever released.
There you go.
Why just do one controversial topic when we can do several, right?
All right. And our tech wizard Max is behind the scenes, so if you're driving in your car, you can't see, but Max is going to be throwing up onto the screen for those of you on YouTube a phrase, and then one of us will read it, and then we'll just talk about it for 10 or 15 minutes. So the first, this is a great one. Mm-hmm. Bringing animals into an expo.
And that is going to be not as a vendor, as a attendee bringing in animals into an expo. Okay, I'll tell you what. I'd like to start this one by saying I understand why they do it. Let's start there, okay? Because there are two reasons that someone would do this. Someone from the outside would bring animals into an expo. The first is the thing that makes vendors angry, and that's going to be bringing them in, attempting to sell them or trade them or something like that. Okay. And I can mention why that makes vendors angry in a moment. But the other is honestly the more common, and it's something that I think a lot of us maybe have forgotten because we've been in this for so long, but they're really proud of them. It's someone who may have 2 snakes, 1 snake. They're very proud of this. They care about this animal a lot. They want to show it off, and they feel they're coming into a community by walking into this reptile show that would accept this and want to see this snake just as much as they want to show off this snake. So I want to premise anything else by starting there, that I understand why people do it.
So much nicer than me.
But understanding the way people think is going to help me in how I react to them too, and that's it. It's just understanding that sometimes there's a naive piece.
There's definitely a naive piece. So I'm going to talk about the naive piece because it is technically possible. And when I say possible, it is an extremely low probability. It is technically possible that the reptile you brought into the expo that you were walking around with doesn't care about its current state of being. But I am willing to bet that it's much more likely that animal is stressed out, it's too cold, it's metabolically not performing, and it is also being exposed to all the pathogens floating around inside the reptile show, which many of them require contact, but there are definitely viruses that are in there that you're going to give your precious purity. Last weekend, I think it was last weekend, was our local monthly show. And Colin and I went up, of course, to get our feeders. And I saw, because Colin was laughing at me, because for like the second one, I start to like make audible noises. I saw not 1, not 2, not 3, not 4, not 5, but 6 bearded dragons on leashes with dragon wings. Holy hell. Like, it was just like, and they're all like clinging to their owner's shoulder, like, for the love of God, don't walk too fast. And I'm sorry. I understand they're proud, but think about the freaking animal. Like, no. I'm sorry. That's just a hard no. There was a person that came to the Pittsburgh Reptile Show. That's one of the shows that I go to. And I always was like, just waiting for disaster, because they would come with a freaking the golden white lip. I don't know if that's a northern or a southern, but a freaking like a white lip python. Like, those things will light you up. And it was not a small one. It was a massive female. And they just walk around. And every time I would see it, I would think, are those things like temperamental? Don't they need high humidity? And you're walking around this show in February with a white lip python? Like, what the hell? So I don't know. That's my 2 cents on it. I'm sorry.
No, to be honest with you, I completely agree. It's to say that I understand why they do it doesn't mean I condone it in any way, shape, or form. From a vendor perspective, what I don't like is 2 things. One, if you're bringing your animal in an attempt to sell or trade it, I had a table fee that I had to pay to bring my animals in here to do that very thing, as did all the other vendors. So that does annoy vendors, when they see that. But number two, I am fully aware that there is crypto in that building. I am fully aware that there's IMB, that everything is in that building. There's mites in that building. Everything is in that building without a doubt. Okay. However, not everything in that building is being draped over my table.
Yep.
And that does drive us nuts, is whenever you're bringing your animals from outside and carrying them and leaning over the table and pointing, it's like, it's almost like you that guy that sprinkles salt like this, you know what I mean? And you're picturing mites just, get sprinkled on your table like that. So yeah, really, if you're a listener and you've done this, hey, we're not attacking you, but hopefully now when you hear this, maybe it gives you a different idea on why. And it's also to your point, Zach, anything can happen. That can be the nicest snake under normal circumstances, but get spooked, takes a shot. And normally the people have them draped over their shoulders or something, and they're not cognizant of where that head is at all times. And I mean, it could thump a kid that's just walking past you, and it's just not a good look, not a good time. So yes, I would say I agree with you on this one. Bringing animals into an expo should be a no-no.
Well, and there's, okay, I don't want to sound highfalutin, but how do I even say this? If the reptile show is in a public place, like a lot of reptile shows are at fairgrounds, the show I go to a lot is in an abandoned mall. It's the only thing that's happening there. So I get it. You're walking from the parking lot to the show with your bearded dragon, you're walking back. But a lot of shows are also in public places. And when you walk across the public place with a 6-foot boa wrapped around your neck, it just isn't cool. Like, whether we like it or not, we owe the public the decency to let them know, I have a 6-foot snake. I'm walking through this space right now. Mm-hmm. And if you don't like snakes and you turn around and someone's got a 6-foot boa, you're just promoting that, negative stereotype of a herp keeper. And we don't need that at all. Like, we don't. And we do go to great lengths with CCR to squash that as much as we possibly can. We're still nerdy and quirky. Don't get me wrong. But that kind of strange, I'm showing off, but I'm highly introverted, but look at me, but leave me alone. That whole dynamic, like, we just do the reptile community a favor and don't do that. And that's me being nice. So.
All right, Max, hit us with another one. Missex snakes. And what we're referring to here would be in the event that you have sold or received a missex snake, how should that be handled? So this is a good one, because I think this is good. First off, I don't care who you are, at some point you will send, unless you're getting them genetically tested by RGI,
which you should do for $25.
You will send out a missex snake. You will sell or give away a missex snake. It happens. And it happens to you as well. We've all received missex snakes. So the question becomes, how is it handled? I know how I handle it as a seller as well as a buyer, but I'm going to toss it to you first and see what your thoughts are on it, Zach.
So this has happened to me a ton. I went on to the Morelia Python Radio Christmas show in 2023, I think. And they have the Festivus poll, the airing of grievances. This was my grievance for 2023. Because when I was amassing the king collection here, I would buy female subadult king snakes. They were definitely big enough to be probed. And I cannot tell you how many female snakes I got mailed, and I pull them out of the bag and I look at them, and I didn't even have to probe the thing to know it was a male. And then I probed it, and sure enough, it was a male. And then we started the dialogue I'm certain that we're going to talk about. So my whole thing is this. If you are breeding snakes and you are selling snakes, I feel if you are going to sell pairs and sexes, that you be able to sex a damn snake. Because I've bred animals before and I couldn't get them to pop and I thought that they were males and I just sat on them until they got bigger and then inevitably figured out what they were and then moved them on to whoever the hell I was moving them on to. But I really deeply feel that if you're going to breed these animals and you're going to be serious about this, you got to be able to do this. And then you also need to be willing to say, I don't know what that is. And not just go to this default, which I know which happened to me with some of the people I was working with. Well, I didn't see a hemipene, so it's a female. Well, I've sexed snakes in the wild doing field research before, and I did it like 6 or 7 times until I got the hemipene to pop. Like you really got to, figure this thing out. So that's that. And I will fully admit, I was a bit of a douchebag with this because I was like, I will never do this. And then sure enough, I set out some OBX Kings that I probed. And they basically had a little bit of an impaction that stopped the probe. And when I probed them, they were females, but they were actually males. They were at that weird size where the tail isn't quite fat. And that's when I learned my lesson. And then that led us to do this entire freaking probe study to see like, well, how many subcaudals deep does a male king snake go? Because that just completely blew my brain. So I've been on the receiving end of it as well. But I feel like if you are seeking out a sexed snake, this is my perspective on this, and you are trying to complete a pair and you buy the snake, I don't feel like you've got this unlimited window of time. But if you get the snake and you probe it yourself and it comes back the opposite of what you were trying to purchase, if you can provide evidence to the seller that, it's wrong, I think in a certain window of time, you should be able to get your money back. And I also think it's on the seller to cover the shipping to get the animal back. That's something that I kind of feel like, because I ended up with so many male snakes because I brought this up to the people and they're like, well, I mean, you bought it. I'm like, no, I bought it because I thought it was going to be a male because you said it was a male. And then I asked how many, female, and then how many scales deep did it probe? Like I kind of turned into a bit of an a-hole over this because it happened to be so many freaking times.
Yeah.
So that's my 2 cents on it.
So as I said, I've been on both sides of this. I remember the first time it happened to me. It was, I bought a pair of variable kings, Theri, what is it, Leona, whatever they are calling them now. And I, bought them as a pair as babies, raised them up for 3 years, put them together, and they started fighting. And, there's too many Peters in that pile. It's figured that out real quick. And it sucks, but at that point, it is what it is. It's a learning experience. And it's happened, more than once over the years, obviously. And I've come, first off, understand, like, I'm not the kind of guy that typically experiences road rage. I mean, I get angry on the road if someone does something, like if somebody yells or flips me off or honks or something, then I'm angry. But if somebody cuts me off, I may, mutter under my breath, but I'm not going to do anything because I've done it.
Yeah.
I know there's times I've cut people off without realizing it or done something stupid in traffic without realizing it. It's, okay, I got stuck at a light and I'm blocking an intersection now because I thought I'd be able to get through. Just things like that. So I don't get too upset with it. I guess I get upset when people are disrespectful or rude. That really, really angers me.
That's where I'm at.
Right. And with this, there's obviously seller responsibility, but I also believe there's buyer responsibility.
Yep.
And so like Metazotics, for example, I actually have a sex guarantee in our terms of sale. 7 days. Now, if you call me in a month, we're going to work something out. But I have to put something in there because, and what it says is you have a 7-day sex guarantee. And what that means is you have 7 days to verify the sex of that animal yourself or by a trusted third party. Because the whole point is I don't want to get a call 3 years from now saying that I sold, a snake that was supposed to be a female and it's a male, because then it's okay. How do I even verify that's the same snake? Do I even want to verify it's the same snake? Because I don't want to insinuate that you're lying. That's not, when someone tells me I've missexed a snake, I don't even ask for proof typically, unless it's something I'm like, I know what that was.
Yeah.
It's because I don't think most people are going to want to lie about it. But because if it's 3 years down the road, how do you make it right? What is fair? Is it a refund? If you want a replacement, maybe I'll have a baby that you want, but you're not happy with that because you've invested 3 years in this animal. So let's just avoid all of that. And this is where it's the buyer's responsibility to verify. And then it's the seller's responsibility to make it right if there's an error. To your point, Zach, if it's an animal I produce myself and it's on the lower end, you're going to get to keep that male for free. And I'm sending you a female at no charge. It's instead of us, shipping back and forth, boom, we're done. Or, if it's a refund, whatever, usually I give you options. I can do this, this, or this. You tell me what's best for you and we'll make it happen. Because yes, the seller absolutely should make it right. But when you start getting it, if I go over a month without sexing an animal that I bought, and then I realize it's wrong, it's on me now.
Yeah, I don't
even contact the seller because it's on me. I should have checked it earlier. I'm not going to mess with this.
I do it. I confirm the sex on every snake right before it goes in quarantine. Mm-hmm. Like I get the box. I initially open the box, open the bag, make sure it's alive. I don't do anything. I put it back in the box. And then here at the house or at the school, wherever it is, it's going into quarantine. Then because that's stressful, there's already the stress of getting it out of the bag, putting it in. So we might as well just
do it.
Probe it
right then.
And for the record, I'm not advocating that you just start probing snakes if you don't have somebody to teach you how to do that. By all means, get a mentor, go to a reptile vet, learn the process of probing from someone. And if you don't know someone, reach out to us. We can maybe help you figure that out. But I do think it is important that you verify. But I've had some doozies, man. My favorite was confirmed pair, and they were both males. That they've been blacklisted forever. One of the males had impacted glands, so it had that giant club tail thing going on. And when you probed it, that's why it went so deep, because you had to express the glands to get the. So that was just a blatant lie. Now I will fully admit that scenario, I did turn into a bit of an asshole.
Oh yeah. If I buy a pair and it's proven and it turns out to be missexed, we're going to have words at that point, because now you flat out lied.
Yeah. And then my other favorite one was, it was a Trans-Pecos rat snakes. And I bought a trio, captive born, confirmed pair. They were all males. They were all subadults. They all had ticks.
Oh, so captive BS. Yeah.
And that one, as a conservation guy, pissed me off because I don't want wild caught snakes. Yep. Like, leave them out in the wild. We got plenty. Now, Trans-Pecos rat snakes have their own species of tick. I do have to admit, I may have been slightly excited about the ticks. The ticks went into a vial. I still have them. So,
Dr. Loughman.
Yes. But that one, I just felt bad. And I did keep the snakes, asked for a refund, didn't get a refund, got the refund. Because I just felt bad for those animals. That was like the whole, that one almost made me not quit, but I was like, I'm not buying snakes anymore. I'm done. Like, this is ridiculous. And they were for the school too, which made it even better. But anywho, So yeah, no. But I just really feel like if you're going to sell, so now another thing though, I'm totally fine with you saying like, I don't know what sex this is, and then if the buyer buys it and it's unsexed, that's fine. You're being honest. You're getting whatever the hell you're getting. And I've done that. I've said, I'm not sure on what the sex is. And they were like, well, I wanted a male. Sorry. Okay, no biggie. My credibility is intact.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, no, this is like a big, big topic for me. So anyway.
All right, Max, hit us with another one. Keeping dangerous snakes.
We're going here.
Yeah, and in this one, we're talking large constrictors, venomous, anything that would be dangerous, whether for the keeper or the public. And what our thoughts are on that.
Yes.
You want to lead or follow on this one?
I'll lead.
Go for it.
I think this is a very nuanced topic. And when we say dangerous snakes, in my mind, I'm thinking about constrictors that are, 11, 12 foot plus, and are heavy bodied and can cause harm to a human. Like a 12-foot blue beauty could maybe, if it got around someone's neck and they were very weak, take them out. But I don't really think that's ever going to happen.
I don't, yeah.
Yeah. But a 12-foot, boa gets around your neck, you're in trouble. So we're talking about those. And we're talking about like venomous vipers, front fang snakes. There we go. We'll just leave it at that. And there's the whole, personal freedom. I should be able to do what I want with my life. And I understand that to a certain extent. However, there is the issue of if something goes wrong, this is now someone else's problem to fix you. And that's the part of this that's always bothered me. Like, if you get bit by a corn snake or you get wrapped up by a woma python, it sucks. But that's really your responsibility and maybe your family's responsibility to come to fix it. But you get bit by a freaking Bothrops, you need to go to the emergency room. And you need to get medical attention, or you could die or lose a limb. And in that scenario, you are now impeding other people. You are now impacting the reptile keeping community because this is going to get press. There's no way it's just going to go under the radar that somebody got bit by a pit viper from South America. That's not happening. And it's that risk reward conversation that I just see it as there's just, for me personally, there's a bit too much risk over the reward. And I just don't see it. Now, that being said, no, disingenuous. Back in the day, I had a cottonmouth that I kept in the private sector. I had a copperhead. Now, I had those snakes not for funsies. I was doing educational talks, and I really thought it was necessary to be able to show people here in West Virginia what a cottonmouth looked like, because everybody says the cottonmouths are all over the place. There's never been a cottonmouth found in West Virginia ever. And copperheads, countless milk snakes, baby rat snakes, common water snakes are killed. And so I viewed that as I have these snakes to educate, and that validated their existence. And the copperhead, I'm going to go to the hospital. I'm going to get a lot of morphine. I'm probably not even going to need any antivenin.
Right.
That's going to cost me a lot of money. I'm not really impacting too many people. Cottonmouth could be a little bit more intensive, but it's not a damn lance head from South America. And that's where the problem comes into play. And if you look at some of the major events that have led to legislation and reptile keepers being pegged as crazy people that are irresponsible and don't represent, that basically are a danger to society. We had the kid in Raleigh that had the spitting cobra get out. We had I think it's Leibowitz in South Carolina. They got bit by the freaking fear snake. We have all the idiots. I said it. Sorry. maybe it's cold medicine, on YouTube doing really dumb crap for likes that make people like you and me look like, you know, to the general populace of these irresponsible, you know, attention-seeking morons. So I just, the risk reward. If you're doing it and it somehow benefits the snake, benefits society, you can take that potential risk of society and eliminate it. Fine. But if you're not doing that, I just don't think it's wise.
So
I'm done.
I think you and I will overlap on some of this, but maybe disagree on other.
Okay.
So I really have no desire to keep any of them. Although it's funny because the only thing I said, the only venomous I do have a desire to keep is a copperhead. And it's for the exact same reason that you kept them, is because I have natives here that I like to show, and I want to be able to show this is what a copperhead really looks like. This is a water snake. These are not copperheads. So I get that completely. So I just don't have a desire to. However, I also don't like being told what I can't do.
Yep.
And I don't like others being that either. So in my opinion is they should absolutely be allowed to be kept in the private sector as pets, but they should have regulation.
Yes.
Where you should have to have a certain permit. That permit should have to require your caging be examined, and, you know, that you have a plan in the event of a bite and escape, you know, things like that. And now I don't think you should have to have this for every single one. You know, it's like permit the individual, not the animal, if that may, because I think it just becomes too taxing and but I do think there should be a little bit of a financial piece where, you know, okay, that venomous permit is $500. You know, it's where, yeah, if you're serious that you want to do this, or you want to have a snake that is 14 foot plus, you're going to pay a little more, you know, to make that happen. Now, what all those regulations are designed, that's going to be for somebody else. But in short, I think that, yes, we should be able to be allowed to have them if we go through the proper channels to ensure that everything's there. And I say that because while they do pose a risk, when you really look back at the cases over the last 20 plus years, I can only, I can't think of a single case where an escaped constrictor or venomous animal escaped captivity and harmed anyone other than the owner or someone who lived in the household. Meaning, so they've not posed, they've not hurt anyone that is the general public. Let's call it that. Okay. Where an escaped dog, different story, you know, that thousands every year, you know. So that's where I'm like, we still are looking at these animals while they have the capability of being dangerous. When you look at how dangerous they really are in comparison to what we consider more mundane animals, I think we're still stigmatized in should someone have them or should they not. But I do, like I said, I think that there should be a way for individuals in any state to have these animals if they go through the right steps to ensure
it's the right
safety.
steps. That's the part though that I think has to be there. Because like in West Virginia, I've said this before, it's kind of interesting. Now there are definitely city ordinances, you know, so there are cities that have their own ordinances. Like I think that Wheeling has an ordinance that says you can't keep vipers. So like not at the city level, but at the state level, you can have a kangaroo, you can have a crocodile, you can have a black mamba. You can't keep a garter snake.
Yeah.
And that to me is like, what? You see, now I understand protecting the wildlife, but the Yahoo down the lane. All right, well, this happened in Morgantown, where West Virginia University is. I rather infamously got a Facebook message from one of our biologists. It said, please tell me this isn't what I think it is. And it was a shield nose cobra from Africa. And I said, yep, that's what you think it is. and it's like, great, it's in Morgantown, like, and it was someone had like quick cell phone pic, and then that made it on social media, and people, were talking about. But I think I feel more strongly about the venomous snakes than I do the larger constrictors, because the larger constrictors is probably going to be your problem. I just don't like like in that scenario that caused a lot of mental distress for the people living in that area, which then made a lot of people kind of look at me as a reptile keeper and be like, well, what the hell does he have that's going to hurt me? And I don't like that. Me being a responsible keeper, I'm having this irresponsible keeper's actions. But at the same time, that doesn't mean every venomous keeper is irresponsible. There are some badass venomous reptile keepers. So I actually should have thought before I spoke. I don't know if it's this way anymore. It very well could be. But when I was in Florida, I really liked the way that Florida did it, because you had to have a mentor. You had to put in, I think it was 1,000 hours or something. The mentor had to sign off, which kind of made the mentor responsible. And you're not going to sign off on someone if you don't think. And so it was kind of like have your cake, eat it too. Yeah. And then you had to pay the permit fee. And if you pay that permit fee, at least you're giving some money back to the community should you have to utilize a lot of resources in the e-room. Because when you get bit by whatever, you're pulling doctors away from a potential car wreck. And that's the part that I don't like is like when it goes bad. I also have, spoken a lot with Jim and Kristen with the Kentucky Reptile Zoo that do a lot of the venom milking. Actually, Bjorn and Mariah are two of my new grad students, and they were keepers there. So I definitely, and their perspective is like, when you get bit by your gaboon viper and you don't have the African antivenin, we now have to take that antivenin away from a zoo that just dropped thousands of dollars, literally thousands of dollars to get that antivenin. So if you're going to have the snakes, another thing I think you should be willing to do is pony up the damn money to have the antivenin. So if something goes wrong, you have the supply needed to keep you alive, and we don't have to take that away from somebody else. If that whole piece is taken out of the equation, I'm okay for the most part. But that's the whole part, is like the price society has to pay for you to have that snake.
Fair enough.
That's the part I don't like. Which is really weird, because in a strange twist of fate, that whole like, you shouldn't be able to tell me what you want to do. Well, you're kind of like taking things away from me by keeping this critter if something goes wrong, if you don't have your stuff together.
Well, but I mean, I can argue that if I decide to walk down the street, I'm putting myself at risk to take some kind of resource away from you if something bad happens.
True.
I mean, so I can, there's any hobby, whether it's horse riding. Well, you shouldn't get on that horse, because if you get thrown off and you become paralyzed, and then you're taking resources for the rest of your life away from society. I mean, so there could be pushback to really anything that we're doing, on how it affects society as a whole. It's if we ensure that nothing we do affected society, we would never leave a room. I mean, that's, but eventually somebody'd have to come clean us up out of there.
This is why I want to live on a mountaintop by myself.
Love it.
So,
all right, Max, give us another one. Shipping companies.
You're going.
Yeah, I'm about to say this probably falls in my realm. And where the controversy right now is with shipping companies is obviously with Morph Market moving into the shipping realm and pricing, and there's arguments about loyalty. There's arguments about obviously going with who's the most economical because of what it does for you as a business, or even as a small breeder, what it does for your customers. There's also controversy out there about how much a shipping company has been making off of each transaction. Okay. I guess I need to premise what I'm going to say with I have positive relationships with almost all of these individuals. Okay. There's many that have helped me personally, or helped, Metazotics, helped CCR. I mean, but I've got their cell numbers in my phone, we message back and forth. So I'm nothing against any of them. And I have positive things to say about all. So I guess my take is, one, loyalty does come into play. And for those who want to be loyal to a shipping company, I can absolutely understand. It's, I mean, there's times I know that people may pay a couple more dollars for a certain species of snake that I have. They could get it somewhere else for a little less, but they're loyal to us. And so I understand loyalty. And for those who want to do that, any individuals who are telling them that they are, unintelligent for doing it, it's not about intelligence. That this is a feeling, a personal feeling, and a morality with those individuals. So I don't think anybody should be put down for wanting to stick with who they've always shipped through, and who's always worked for them. The other flip of the coin, when you're talking substantial savings, it's hard to not take that. Loyalty goes so far, for most people. And I don't think it's not fair to judge an individual, especially in the times that we're in now, to save a substantial amount on shipping when going with another company. Honestly, that's business, on my side. But unfortunately, you have to you look at that, especially if you're passing those savings, because, like, for most people, when it comes to shipping, the business isn't really paying for the shipping in the first place. They're passing that cost on to the customer to a degree. Some will eat a few dollars in shipping supplies and things like that, but they're still passing those that cost over. So really, with going with lower shipping, you're increasing your sales because you're able to offer a lower shipping cost to customers, which entice more customers to purchase from you. That's really how this plays out. So again, whether someone is going one way or the other, I can understand both trains of thought. The only thing, and I say this with Darian from Morph Market as a friend, we communicate. I Dubia.com, Morph Market, both. I'm a fan of both of those companies. The only potential issue I have with Morph Market's shipping, I'm using Morph Market shipping for some of my shipments at the, right now too. So I've used them all. Anytime one company becomes so powerful, that makes me nervous. That's it. And it's, like Amazon. They've done great things for the consumer. The ease, the pricing, it's very positive. But for small companies, for other companies, they've been bad. It's hurt a lot. So that's my only potential. Is this going to be a long-term problem? But it's a smart move. It's a very smart move on Morph Market's part. There's no doubt about it from a business standpoint. Let me back up. There was another thing that I think was a problem too that people had that I just don't have, and that is the amount that shipping companies would make per shipment. Like their markup on top of FedEx. But you have to keep in mind that difference. You're paying for employees. You're paying for overhead. You're paying for, the shipping integration into the websites and all the things that come in there. There's a lot of expenses that go into operating any company. And so when you think they're making $20 every shipment, no, they're not. Okay. There's a lot of expense that comes out of that. But then I also look at, okay, think about how many times these shipping companies, how many times have you seen their names on banners at shows that you've gone to?
All the time.
Right. And so there's so much of that money that has gone to sponsoring things that we in the community get to partake in, get to be a part of, or get to enjoy. So while yes, the price of shipping was hurting. I mean, it was higher. It's not necessarily just based on, that their cut. Okay. Because if you went to FedEx all by yourself, you're paying even more than what they were charging you. So, I see people's complaints, but I guess I understand every step where they're at and why they are there. So that's my take on the shipping is, in short, go with who you're comfortable with, whether that is those that save you the most money, those that you've been loyal to for years. I think they're all great. They're wonderful people that are at all of these companies. And I have never had a problem with a shipment with any of them that they didn't jump on to find out where it was, to figure out what's going on and communicate with me. So that they're all great all across the board.
Okay. I don't have that many strong feelings. I give the perspective of small batch breeder, consumer. All I know is that in the past year and a half, I was shipping out a lot of snakes with the university. I was shipping snakes to you. I was shipping out snakes as false water cobras specifically as a breeder. And it was kind of crazy to watch the price of shipping go from I remember it was etched in my brain, from Wheeling to Florida was $40. And then that was I don't know, 23. Mm-hmm. And last fall, when I shipped a freaking snake down to Miami, and it was $98, it had more than doubled. I was like, holy hell.
Yeah.
And I will tell you, I have absolutely looked at, I want this animal. Where is it? Shoot, it's in California, and I'm over here, and that's going to cost. So as a consumer, and I never talk about market, there are people on the other side of the country that prior to the break in shipping, I was like, well, I'm not going to get that animal from them. I'll wait for somebody over here.
Or they got to have 6 animals you want to make it worth it. Yeah.
Uh-huh. Now with Morph Market, I'm like, yeah, I'll take that snake. It's only going to be $45 to get it over here from California. So I've heard a lot of people complain, and I feel bad for the other shipping companies. I do. And I don't want to sound heartless, but I do teach about evolution and adaptation. And, there's a little bit of natural selection here, and they've suddenly gotten a competitive edge. So but we throw the empathy and the human dimension in there, and now it's like, but what's that going to lead to? Because I know I've heard quite a few people say they're going to drop the price, the other companies are going to go away, and then the price is going to skyrocket.
No.
And I don't know if that's going to happen.
That's not going to happen. I can tell you right now.
I look at that and go, well, then people just aren't going to use them, and then they're not going to get the revenue. And then that's I think that they're savvy enough when it comes to business to know that this whole idea of they're going to crash the market and then own the market. I don't know. But
I don't see that.
It has opened up possibilities of snakes for me now that I can get those cheaper shipping rates. I will flat out say that.
At some point, the discount percentage will lessen. And by discount percentage, meaning the discount off of FedEx's rates is what you get through any of the shipping companies. That discount percentage won't be as high, so the price will go up to a small degree. But no, I don't see that. There's not going to be where, now you're used to it, then bam, you're hit with, suddenly these large fees. No, but the negative that I see potentially happening is you don't have as many. One, anytime you lose competition, that's problematic in the long run.
Yeah, you need competition.
Mm-hmm. But two, it's you then have either one individual or one group, which is called the Morph Market Group, that decides where they want that revenue put back into the community. And so if you're someone that is, whether it be, if you're in a dynamic or in a lane that is acceptable for that company, you may get, sponsorship money put in there. If you're not, you won't. Where if you've got 5 companies maybe 2 of those companies, you're in a lane that they, and so it's more likely to be spread back through the community whenever there's multiple companies than if there's one. That's what I'm saying. That's where I'm going. That's kind of my potential downfall from it. So,
okay. I
think we hit this one.
Yep.
Go ahead and read that one, big guy.
Does taxonomy matter? Oh, Jesus. Scientifically, it matters. We're done. In herpetoculture, though, my answer might shock some people. It matters to a point.
Mm-hmm.
But if we're going to go there right away, American rat snakes.
Let's do it.
If you want to recognize golf hammock rat snake, I think that's Williams eye. I could be wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Brain's not quite working, guys. In the herpetoculture realm, I don't see a damn problem with that. I don't. Because it's got the phenotype. It had a name. You obviously want a golf hammock rat snake. You don't want a yellow rat snake. And I really think with locality keeping, and I've talked about this before, we're keeping haplotypes. We're keeping geographic variation. We're interested in zoogeography. So if you want to say, I have Williams eye, and that's the herpetoculture term for it, great. But if a well thought out manuscript comes out, gets through peer review, and is accepted by the scientific community, there was a lot there, and you don't like it, then just recognize the taxonomy in your herpetoculture realm. The only time this really matters, though, is when it comes to laws.
Bingo!
And that's when, whether we like it or not, it really freaking matters.
Mm-hmm.
Because, you may end up with a scaleless corn snake that might at some point in time have had MRI DNA in it and might end up in a state where MRI lived. And now you've got a real problem. And you know who you are, and we love you. And in that scenario, I will flat out tell you, I do not think that is right from a scientific point of view at all. I think that might be abusing science just a little bit. You are really going out on a limb. Phenotypically, it doesn't look like an MRI. It doesn't smell like an MRI. It's not an MRI, but it is an MRI. In that scenario, yeah, taxonomy really matters. So it's our favorite word. It's nuanced. It just depends on where the hell you are and what you're doing and what you're trying to accomplish.
So here's the funny thing. I'm going to say, yes, it does.
Oh,
it does. Which is why it gets me so angry when I say you guys. That's not fair. When academics don't get it right.
Yep.
Or flip-flop back and forth. I think it does matter. And I wish that different states recognize it differently.
Yeah.
I didn't know that the state herpetologist, I didn't realize this until just recently, that a state herpetologist can just basically, they're the ones who finally end up, by state herpetologist, meaning the state DNR herpetologist.
Yeah.
They're the ones who decide whether or not that state is adopting a new taxonomic, shift or whatever. They're like, no, I don't recognize that. And so, that makes it even more difficult, as a keeper across the board. So I think that it's almost like, I wish there was a hardcore that, yes, this is it now, or no, this is not, that spreads across the United States or across, globally, at this point. But that's, and so I do fully see your point, because, this is something that we've talked about many times.
Yeah, we have.
I do fully see your point in the reptile keeping community, that we can recognize whatever we want to recognize and keep it. And I guess, it only bothers me when we lump something together.
Yeah.
We can separate as much as we want. the more separation we have at a taxonomic level and then at a legal level, it actually opens up more doors to what we can keep by things becoming smaller and smaller pocketed, on what it is. But it's when we start lumping things in where we go from all these different rat snake species to 3, that's a problem and what it does from a law. And it's just, and then whenever, it starts separating again. So does it matter? Yes. I guess from a non-academic, I would prefer there to be a more standardized set of parameters that had to be met before this shit keeps switching back and forth.
But we've talked about this, Clint.
And it still happens, Zach.
The science is, whether we like it or not, the science it's new. Like, I know it seems old that technology happened in 2000, but it's only 25 freaking years old, and molecular biology has increased technologically in orders of magnitude. And what the hell, whatever is a species genetically is whatever the technology at that point in time enables us to do. I will give you a ray of hope. I think, well, I'm going to give you a ray of hope, and then I'm going to yank it away from you at the same time. So I think soon we may actually get to a point where we're able to look at multiple genes, like entire genomes, and do comparisons, and it's not going to be cost prohibitive. And when we get to that point, I think we will get results that are more permanent. So, yay, it's coming, but it's not going to be here.
Give me the
Yeah, but it's not going to be here for 10 years. We got another decade, I think. But
right,
I
can
say,
you guys leave stuff alone for the next 10 years?
No, of course not. It's pretty and it's there. But I think that the next decade, because now with this kind of genomics approach, we're not looking at one gene, we're looking at a lot of genes. And just the whole science as a whole is getting better. And you can literally now like watch the genes move across the landscape with your analyses, which before we would argue, is it a subspecies? Is it a species?
Mm-hmm.
And like the papers that are coming out now, like I wasn't on team subspecies. There was I think even a year ago, I wasn't on team subspecies. And then there's been some papers coming out where I'm like, okay, I finally understand where the hell this subspecies stuff is gaining some weight. If that makes sense. So, but I do. All right, now I got to be careful because I don't want to. I do think that. So I've said in the past, the scientists don't care about herpetoculture, which really pisses people off. Okay. When I say that, what I mean is the academic that's sitting in a laboratory in the, Field Museum in Chicago, they don't necessarily keep snakes. They're just trying to figure out the evolutionary relationships of these snakes. They have no concept of us as keepers. Okay. Mm-hmm. That scientist, I think it's fair for them not to care. However, the Department of Natural Resources people who are that interface between science and the keeping community, I do think that they have a responsibility because they are the ones that are ultimately coming up with regs that impact us. So I think that they need to really have a good handle of what a species is, the papers, what's the evidence, is it valid, is it not valid? And I think those scientists, if I was going to give any credence to your argument, those are the ones that are at that interface. And it does matter, I would argue, because they're the ones that are going to put forth a regulation that is going to then tell me and you what to do. And in that scenario, that does matter.
That's a great point. Great point.
I do think that matters. So when those individuals are like, yeah, I don't care about keeping snakes, but I'm going to tell you what you can keep, but I don't do it. And so that's when we might have a problem.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think it's actually from what you and I are both saying here, that having that set point, like here's what makes a new species or whatever, it's almost like instead of throwing that at the academics in the field, that should go to the individuals that are designing these regulations,
Yes.
where they should have this checklist on whether or not it falls into that's, yeah. I mean, so I think we're both probably wanting the same thing, but it wasn't until you just said that it made sense to me on
museum
who should
person,
have it.
their job is they exist in the realm of herpetology, and they should exist in the realm of herpetology. That's what they aspired to be. But when you go into wildlife management, natural resources, all that, there's an element there where you're taking the wild and the human dimension, and you're that interface person. And that person, if you're writing the regs, you should know the subspecies of king snakes and the intergrade zone and what the hell you're going to do, and what, the paleo history of how long ago was this dominant form here. And and a lot of them do, but some of them kind of, it's questionable. And so that's where I will concede a bit.
I think this is a good meeting ground for us on that. I like that. I like that.
All right.
All right, Max.
Well, we're friends.
That's right. Is there such a thing as a beginner snake? That's our next topic. Is there such a thing as a beginner snake? I would say there's species that certainly lend themselves better to an individual that lacks experience. Yes. I'd probably say that, one of the top beginner snakes is a ball python. Other than the feeding problems that it will give people when they put it in its, 40-gallon terrarium as a hatchling. Inevitably I deal with that quite a bit, but yeah, I think that there are definitely some that, because I look at what a new keeper is going to run into. They're going to make mistakes. They're going to be timid, right? They're going to be afraid of being bit. And I mean, like for me, I often say getting bit by this baby snake's probably the best thing that can happen to you as a snake keeper, because it's going to show you, oh, that's it. And it's better to get bit by it while it's young than, when it's older.
Yes.
So, yes, I think that there are. I mean, we could name several. It's, corn snakes are obviously going to be one that people would name, but I would argue that I think a black rat snake is a better beginner snake than a corn snake, because it's heftier.
Well, that's what. First of all, a forest cobra is not a good beginner snake.
No, nothing venomous.
So I don't think you need to be coming out. Yeah, I don't. But like, I don't think a newborn corn snake is a great beginner snake, because it's a freaking little worm that will like, you can kill that a hell of a lot faster than a baby ball python. If you don't give it water, if you don't check your humidity levels, surface to body ratio, it's going to prune up and die. Like, but a 10-month-old corn snake that's started and ripping and roaring, that's a great beginner.
They're solid. Yeah. Well, that's almost like a 10-month-old corn snake's like a month-old black rat snake. You know what I mean? When you think about that body structure, that body type, and all that. So, yeah. And I mean, there's several. We can make arguments that like Mexican black kings aren't a bad, beginner snake. They're going to be a little more high strung, as babies than what a corn or black rat's going to be. But there's a lot that the care would be very easy, but the personality makes them not the best. California kings, care is just the same as a corn, but they're little a-holes, as babies. And the striking and the poop flinging and the tail rattling, that's just going to scare new keepers. So it's, for me, I'm looking at, okay, what's hardy, easy, and docile. And so, if you have to check all three of those boxes, if for a first time snake keeper.
I do think a good quality in a beginner snake is a snake that is active and engage in is using its vivarium, because you've got that, everybody loves the snake for the first week or two, and then it's in a hide box, and it's in a hide box, and it's in a hide box, and then you're like, that novelty starts to wear down.
Yeah.
But like garter snakes, they're engaging when they're eating. They're precocious, they're inquisitive, they smell, they crap a lot. But in a lot of ways, I've noticed this with like the animals we keep at school, the snakes that kind of challenge a keeper a little bit, they keep you in it. And then you get to, you're actually doing stuff and getting rewarded. But at the same time, then it takes a certain kind of person. Because if you're the kind of person that's like, can lock in and focus and wants a reward, then a garter snake is your animal. If you want, I'm not promoting this, so please don't get upset. But I definitely know there's a lot of people that are like, I want a pet that I can dote on, I can give attention to, but I don't have to take it out 5 times a day. Then maybe a corn snake's perfect for you. So I think that to answer this question correctly, it's a lesson in psychology. I think that you have to like define the different kinds of keepers, and the different keeper types dictate what the best beginner snake is. But do I think you should be starting with a false water cobra that's going to become an 8-foot monster? Probably not. I have definitely dissuaded several people that were like, I listened to you on a podcast. I don't have any snakes, false water keeper, cobra. And I was like, well, get a corn snake and talk to me next year. Like,
yeah, it's saying,
it's a lot of snake.
Well, it's like, there are what I would call starter Asian rat snakes. Like, bamboos are a great place to start when you're moving into, Asian rat snakes. But I don't recommend Asian rat snakes as starter or beginner snakes.
Yeah.
Different, get your hands on something else first, so you're not afraid of a snake, because these are going to be faster moving. They may be more apt to strike. They're just little things that you want to already not be a problem for you before moving to those. So that was a good point. I mean, it depends on who that beginner is, because that's like when I said, the heftier bodied snake, because I'm thinking about a 6-year-old handling a snake. But if I'm dealing with, a 30-year-old, their first, okay, we can talk about some things here, and it does change the stuff up a little bit. So good point.
All
right, Max, hit us with another. Expo saturation. Yeah. So we're talking about the number of reptile shows that there are in any given area. Tell us about your area first.
My area, I mean, I don't know if it's saturated. So for me, if I need to go to a reptile show here in Wheeling, I'm on I-70. I can get to Interstate 79. So I can be in Pittsburgh in a little over an hour. And then there's the All Ohio show out in Columbus that I can be to in about 2 hours.
Let me how often is the Pittsburgh show?
These are both monthly shows, and they've been monthly since I was in college. So back in the late 90s, when I was like really going to shows, I would, and it was nice. Most of the time they were not the same weekend. And so All Ohio is Saturday, and then Pittsburgh is Sunday. And if they were the same weekend and I wanted to go to 2 shows, I could do it, because one was on one day, one was on the other day. So I'm kind of used to, my idea of reptile show is like 2 options monthly. And then there were like, I'm talking about me back in the 90s. And then there was like the big show. There was no Tinley. There was no Schaumburg. There were no NARBCs. It was Daytona. Like that was it, And I remember the year I got married, that's when Kathy and I went down to Florida Tech for that semester of grad school. I took some of our wedding money because I was going to finally go to Daytona, and Daytona was a freaking spectacle. And that was in 2003. Yes, 2002. Sorry. And, and I could say when I went to my first Tinley was a spectacle. It was a completely different type of spectacle. So my perspective as a buyer is there's now more options in Pittsburgh. There's a show that shows up like once in the fall, once in the spring. There used to be another show in that those shows, the monthly Pittsburgh show, to their credit, has gotten better. But there are definitely quality breeders there. Can you tell I'm trying to say things in a diplomatic way? But I have walked out of these monthly shows several times being like, what is going on in there? I have not done that recently. I have done that within the past 5 years. So I just don't know if I'm getting anything out of them.
And that, to me, says saturation. So, okay, going out on a limb here. You go to a reptile show every month, right?
Ish.
Yeah. What do you come home with?
Feeders.
Bingo.
Well, hold on. And for some unknown reason, the past 3 months, freaking geckos.
Well, good.
Yeah.
Good. I'm glad it's something more than just feeders. So
there's one table, and she has oddball geckos. And I came home with a Erythrodactyloides willardi or something like that. The chameleon geckos.
Mm-hmm. I have
and then my son, Colin, he's really gotten into Australian reptiles. And he came to me and was like, they have an underwoody saurus, which is, I think, called a barking gecko.
I've got one of those too, yeah.
And he just played me like a fish because I had told him how awesome they were. And he ran off and did his own thing at the show and found me. And I was like, well, that's coming home with us. And it was the same awesome breeder. So I will say one thing about the show, and I can use the Pittsburgh show as an example. 2 years ago, I was there maybe 15 minutes. I would drive an hour. I would be in there 15 minutes. I would do my loop. I would get out because it was all ball pythons, crested geckos, leopard geckos, bearded dragons. To the show's credit, there are now colubrids present. You know, I've done some triple takes. Like, whoa, that's here. So the diversification is happening. I do like the diversification. So now I spend 40 minutes, but I don't know if I spend an hour. But it's definitely holding my interest. And I walk out feeling, okay, this is kind of heading in the right direction now. So I do have that feeling. I will say that.
I think the diversification you're seeing is more of a market shift as a whole, where the expo saturation, it is certainly, in my opinion, taking place in certain areas. And this is, you can have a show separated enough. And again, a lot of this is going to come from a vendor standpoint. Okay. I'm definitely have my vendor hat on through this, but I can talk on what I see happening in a lot of these shows too. So as a vendor, you have a choice on where you're going to vend any particular day. And how far apart are the two shows that you were just discussing?
You mean
the All Ohio and those two, not from you, but from each other.
3 hours.
3 hours. So I'm guessing then there's a lot of overlap on vendors between those two shows.
There is actually not as much as you would think.
Really?
Now, and it's interesting because back in the day, late 90s, there was a lot of overlap, but there weren't as many vendors. Now there's a distinct Western Pennsylvania group of vendors, and there's a central Cincinnati, central Ohio group of vendors. So you'll see like the same cricket guy and the same mouse guy. And there's some that overlap, but most of them are different.
Gotcha. Okay. In a lot of the shows in the Midwest, that's not the case.
Yeah.
I mean, you're going to have a lot of similar vendors. And so whenever you have a show, two shows happening, especially at the same time, 3 hours apart, the shows start dwindling because vendors have to choose. And so that's one. The next piece that becomes a complication for a lot of vendors is when a show goes monthly, or if there's too many shows even within the area. Like right now, I'll be honest, for Evansville, we're saturated. We've got a monthly show in Evansville, and then we have three shows that are happening. There's at least 1 to 2 of them a month. You know, they're not monthly shows, but you're going to have at least another show within roughly an hour and a half of Evansville. Then you have Indianapolis, that's not quite monthly, but about 8 a month. I'm sorry, 8 a year in Indianapolis, which is 3 hours from Evansville. Same thing. You've got about 8 a year for Lexington, 3 hours. You've got, gosh, I think it's almost monthly now, St. Louis, which is 3.5 hours from Evansville. Then Nashville. I mean, so there's all these, that are kind of within our area. But it's really, I'm just considering kind of the 2 hours in down, that really saturated, especially with Evansville going monthly. What you start seeing is the customers, the attendants, there's no sense of urgency anymore. They have to get in there and get their feeders as you go, every month to get, they come in. Steve does great at every show because Steve's the bug guy. So they come in to get their feeders, but there's not as much of a, if I want this reptile, I've got to get it now, or I've been waiting to get there, to get, see what they have. And I really want to come home with something new. And so you're more likely to experience, I'll see if you still have it next time. And while it's not all about money, I get that, not in the hobby. When you're vending a show, a big part of it is about the money, because you're giving up multiple hours of packing animals prior to the show, traveling to the show, setting up for the show, giving up all that time, and then tearing down, bringing your animals home, setting them all back up. There's a lot of investment, whether it's financial, if it's a far show for you, or if it's just time that goes into it. And then the consumer, response is lessened because the show's there every month. It's just not as, enticing. And whenever you have multiple shows in an area, whether it's the same promotion or various promotions, again, it just becomes more and more saturated to where there's not as much excitement anymore. It's not as much of an event.
Well, I want to give my perspective as the consumer.
Mm-hmm.
I view Morph Market as a 24-hour a day, 24-hour, 365 reptile show, where I can go on the other colubrids tab. It's organized, and I can immediately look for whatever the hell I'm looking for. And that is what's really, like, I use that to kind of get an idea of what the hell a price should be. And then I'll go into the monthly show and, excuse me, very rarely do I buy a snake. But I have definitely looked and seen an animal I was looking for, was kind of following one on Morph Market at the show, and thought, meh, I don't know anything about this breeder. I know something about Jason Nelson.
Mm-hmm.
I would feel much more comfortable. Not that this breeder's bad. It's just Jason Nelson has built a brand. Jason Nelson is the guy when it comes to basin, Deserticola gopher snakes. And that's the reason why I'm using that is I finally saw a Great Basin gopher snake at the damn Pittsburgh show and was like, oh. And I actually spent more money getting it from Jason to know the quality I was getting than just picking up one for $75 to say I had one. But I think that is reflective of me as a consumer, though.
It absolutely is. But you actually bring up
like Great Basin gopher snake, boom, that's mine.
You actually bring up another interesting point, though, from a vendor standpoint, where so Indianapolis, Lexington, and Indianapolis, Lexington, Tinley, and Evansville. Those 4 shows, Metazotics will always be at. And it's not that, I mean, Daytona is going to be bigger than, you know, the locals, but we are regulars there. And now what you just said about, you know, well, you know, Jason Nelson, you know what he's got. Vendors almost get to a point where they kind of have to be at a certain show every month or every time that show's taking place, not because it's going to be a great show, but they've developed a certain reputation there. So it's like, you know, Metazotics, anybody who's listening, if you're an Indianapolis resident, you're someone who goes to Indianapolis show, what do you expect to see on Metazotics table? They would answer you, we're going to go see a wide range of colubrids, and there's always going to be something on the table that wasn't there last time. You know, and they're going to come see that. That's the expectation. So it's almost like you've developed this reputation, and then you're almost locked into it at these shows where you can't miss a show because it starts to dwindle, or you may even lose your space where, you know, you can't get back into that show until, you know, space opens up. So that's another problem for vendors, is whenever it gets so saturated, you want to do your local shows, you want to be, you know, there for everybody, but then it gets to the point where it's like, if it's not profitable, or it becomes like Evansville. I loved doing the Evansville show because I see so many people that I know, right? It's a big social thing, but every month I'm too busy. I don't do the Evansville show personally anymore. Anna takes care of that show. She does a great job, and she's now becoming more and more. I mean, she was already recognizable here because of, you know, how much she does here at the shop, but you start having to cut them out because there's just too much. There's just too much, and it's not as relevant for everybody anymore. So.
Well, I think we did. I think we nailed this.
I think we do. What we got?
Sand and pine in the substrate.
What else we got left? If we're going to do one more, let's hit a good one here.
Oh, Jesus.
That's perfect ending right here. The last one we're going to do, overrated colubrids.
We were friends up until this moment.
You can go first, buddy.
I don't want to, because I'm afraid I'm going to piss people off.
There's no way no matter what animal we say here, there's going to be listeners who are going to go, what assholes.
I'm looking right at you, Nasaj. I don't get the mountain king snake thing. I just don't. I like Alterna. I have 4 Leonis now. They're cool snakes. They're great snakes. I don't know if they're awesome snakes. I can't. I feed them their mice. They eat their mice. You know, I haven't tried, and I just sit there and I look at them, and they're very pretty. But I got other pretty snakes. I got Stewart's milk snakes that look like a damn, you know, coral snake I saw in Costa Rica. That's a freaking wicked snake. But I look at these Alterna and these Leonis, and I put them together, and I literally thought, why don't I just go into the garage and pick up a hammer and hit myself in the face? Like, I am volunteering. I am walking into a world of pain for enjoyment. And I just don't understand that. And I understand the challenge, and, you know, but all I've heard a lot from you is like, oh, you know, they're not eating, and I don't have lizards anywhere near me. I don't. And then the whole locality thing, I understand the locality thing, but the Alterna people take the locality thing to a level. Like, when I realized that you're segregating populations of Alterna based off of, like, what side of a road the cut is on.
What rock did you find it on?
That to me is just a little bit insane. But at the same time, I respect it. And I'm a locality person, but I think I think this is what has to happen for me. For me to really get the Alterna bug, somebody needs to get my ass out to West Texas so I can walk a cut and, breathe in the desert air and just have that experience, because that's what I need. If I have that experience, that'll be what'll put the hook in me. But I have a pair of non-locale Blair's Alterna. I have the 2.2 Leonis that are locality. I don't know what locality. I got it written on it on their tubs. But I would be lying to you if, when I put those things together to breed this year, I just stood there and was like, I should just go cut myself. Like, what am I doing here? Like, I moved on a pair of Harris County king snakes, or speckled kings, Hobraka. It's like those things hatch out to die because I don't have the resources to get them to eat. So they're moving on. And so that would be mine. And it's not that I don't love the way they look. They are badass. It's just, I just don't understand why you want to hurt yourself. So that's what it is for me.
I understand your opinion, and it's wrong.
Okay.
And
that's fair.
I love the Montane Kings.
I know you do.
So into them now. I think I like the little bit of a challenge that they do.
You cut yourself at night, don't you, in secret?
There's such variety. They're so naturally beautiful. You know what I mean? I don't know. I think it's even just the grays on them they're gorgeous grays.
I agree with you 100%.
And I think that it's, sometimes there's like the mystery. I say mystery. We know it takes lizards, but sometimes it's the type of lizard or how you're scenting them or this or that. I don't know. I'm just really, really into them. I think it may be partly also because it's something that I don't see a lot of anywhere near me.
Yeah.
And they've been this mystique for so long that now that I finally got the resources to be able to be, to have a level of success with them, it's on top of it. So I really, really dig them. Well, I'm super into them right now.
I said this on another podcast. I think it's King Snake Chronicles.
Mm-hmm.
I view them as the IPAs of North American colubrids. They're like the craft beer, and I think IPAs taste like piss. I can't drink them, but you give me a Natty Light, and I am the happiest guy on earth. I am a simple
horse
man.
Piss.
Yes, and I will drink my horse piss, and those are my Getula Kings, because those little bastards, you put them together in a tub, and sure, there are definitely Getula that don't eat as babies, but some of them are so voracious, they just eat each other. So, and I don't want to have to sit there after dealing with people in my job at night. I just want to feed my personal collection. I'm not a lazy keeper, but I have some respect for a simple life.
Mm-hmm.
And that is why I love the Getulas. That's why I love the false water cobras. That's why I love the bull snakes. In my collection, it's really funny. It got dark in here. It's gone from like all these weird, obscure things, and it's just slowly over time trickled to these really easy snakes. And that's because I have done the challenge thing. I have succeeded. And now I'm like, I don't want to hurt myself anymore. So I am moving out the things that don't want to eat. And I am just eating my Natty Light. And everybody, IPAs are cool. I respect what went into brewing them, but I don't like them. So that's it. Give me my Natty Light. Give me my Getula. There you go. Okay.
Well, you think you are going to piss people off.
Okay.
Oh, man, I can't believe I'm about to say this.
And for the record, I like Montane Kings. I just don't understand the pain. There you go.
I like these, but I think they're overrated as their popularity, in my opinion, is not justified.
I think I know where you're going, too. I just want to know if I'm right.
Hognose.
Boom. Knew it. I knew there was a reason why I got a text that was like, hey, do you want 9 of them?
I end up sending like 13. Just take all these.
Just take them all, Zach.
So
I was like, okay.
So here's the they're. It's not that, again, it's not that I dislike them. It's not that at all. They're, first off, there's been jokes before made about this, but when you think about what their natural color is,
yeah, it's brown with brown
it's
and brown.
Brown snake. And
Yeah.
I just lose interest in brown snakes. But I think for me, they come in some pretty wicked colors at this point.
Yep.
You know, and that is interesting, but I'm not a morph chaser. I like morphs. I think, cool more, and I like having them, but I don't like being in a race to see who can have the next combo before this person has a combo. I don't like that. It's one of the things that kind of moved me away from ball pythons. Is I'm also in a way a collector, and I like to have the complete set.
Oh yeah, you're never going to do that with them.
Right. And so that doesn't do it for me either. But I also, it's funny because I'm going to say they don't get large enough for me, but then Montane Kings are fine. But there's just this little fat derpy thing.
Oh, come on now.
I mean, it's a lot of times, whenever you see, if there's a post of a snake doing something real stupid, it's a lot of times it's a hognose that's doing it. It just, I don't know. They do cool things like the playing dead is wicked. The hooding, from the Easterns is really cool. But I mean, out of all the Westerns, just, they don't do much for me. And we're talking about problematic babies. They want fish scent sometimes. Yes. I mean,
but
really?
But they will eat.
But you have to find the right scent.
But I found the right scent. A stupid can of tuna from the grocery store will go remarkably far. And if that doesn't work, you switch it up and you put another quarter in there and you get pink salmon. But I don't have to run out and get a goddamn Scaloporus and kill a wild lizard that I love to then rub on a dead pinky and then not touch it so my oils get on there. So,
but I don't ever have to worry about a Montane King wanting to turn around and chew off my finger, because there's a percentage of these baby hogs that the moment you touch them, I mean, it's just open mouth to anything. I don't have to worry about any of that crap with it. I think that if it wasn't for this little pig nose that they have,
by the way,
they would have never taken off to the degree they have.
It's the cute factor, 100%.
Yeah.
I don't think that the rest of the world sees hognose snakes through the nerd perspective that I do. I don't, because I've talked to people who have had hognose snakes and about how all their biology, and they have literally fallen asleep. They just don't care. I like them because there are some of the morphs that are pretty cool looking, and I'm not a morph person, but it's kind of like bull snakes. Trumbauer hypo bull snakes, to me, I'm not a morph person. I will always have those. Those things are just insanely cool. Mm-hmm. And now, working with John, I went and saw his collection. I will say, I didn't know. It's funny you said they don't get that big. I don't know if you've seen big breeder hognose snakes, because they are actually a big, chunky snake. We have one at the university. It's like a 3-footer, and it's an impressive thing. Mm-hmm. So, but I like keeping hogs in naturalistic vivaria to see them do all the cool things they do out in the wild. That's where I get the reward. But I get very annoyed when you put a freaking top hat on them and a monocle and boop the snoot and all that crap. The introduction to the hognose book, I've got it mapped in my head. I haven't written it yet, but we're going to talk about that, because it's taken this wonderfully majestic, derpy animal and taken the majesty out of it and just made it absolutely dumb. And then that's what we're celebrating about them. And they do some dumb things. I have sent you many pictures. The damn things are doing it right now.
Wedged in between.
Wedged between the glass and plastic. So, yeah, they do some interesting things, but I like the behaviors. I like that they're active. I like that, I've seen them in the wild. And I will say one thing. Wild hogs are very different than these captive monstrosities we have made. The inbreeding, keeping the morph lines. Yeah, those animals are not, they do dumb stuff. I don't know what to say, but there is a challenge to keeping them alive. But I like that the secret is tuna, not a desert Scaloporus shed skin that I don't have access to.
It can be difficult. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah.
And I want to make sure I clarify here that I'm not saying they're bad snakes. I'm not saying people shouldn't have them, shouldn't enjoy them. The question was, what is an overrated colubrid?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that for their immense popularity, I believe there are other species that should peel some of that popularity off and should have it themselves. So just not my favorite.
I could see an element of truth to that.
Yeah. 40% of the market.
Yeah. I better get this book written.
Gotcha.
Anyway. All right. Well, this was fun.
This was definitely fun. This was
we'll do this again.
And if you're listening to this, if you're on YouTube, leave a comment about what you thought about this episode, because this was a completely different concept for us, and it's been fun for us. But let us know what you think, and you can even give other topics in case we want to do another episode like this in the future. Also, we don't say this enough. If you're listening on Spotify or Apple, please give us a review, hit the stars, whatever it is that you do on those. I don't really know.
I'm saying this for my students, and I know I got students that listen to this because I said I would never say this. You get it one time. I want everybody to smash that like button. Smash it. So there you go. I said it one time. I have a PhD. There you go.
Love it.
Okay.
All right. Send us out, buddy.
All righty. So if you need to get a hold of me, Dr. Crawdad on Instagram, Zac Loughman on Facebook. My voice is just completely going now. If you're interested in undergrad and you want to work with animals and a whole lot of snakes, please consider West Liberty University. Our zoo science major is stellar. Yeah, I would love to be your professor. And then if you're interested in false water cobras or king snakes, locality, Florida Kings, whatever, look me up and follow our official Colubrid Fest Facebook page and our CCR Facebook page, Instagram. And then finally, we are proud members of the Morelia Python Radio Network. So thank you, Eric and Owen, for hosting us. So that's me. Where can they find you, Clint?
You can check out everything that we have available, both products as well as available animals, on Metazotics.com. Feel free to send us a message at any point at metazotics@gmail.com. You can also find me on Facebook, Clint Bartley. You can find us at Metazotics on Facebook, as well as Colubrid and Colubroid Radio on Facebook.
All righty. So be it evening, morning, afternoon, or night, whatever time of day it is, have a good one, and we will see you on the next episode of Colubrid and Colubroid Radio. Bye.